What's up, guys? I've got a relatively quick video coming at you today. Rare, I know. We'll see how quick it actually ends up being, but I've got good intentions. So right now I'm going to give you the secrets to lat pull downs. But before I do that, please hit that like, that subscribe, all that good stuff. Share this page with a reasonable number of friends. Keep helping it grow. I appreciate all the support. So these tips will be helpful for basically any type of pull down. Specifically what I'm looking at, most people, if you're doing a lat pull down, you're trying to train your lats. Obviously, you can do some different pull down variations, also good for upper back, but most of these are going to be geared towards lats. Some of these can be used when doing both hands. Obviously, you'll see from one of the tips, basically you can only do it one hand at a time. But even with that, it can carry over and give you some help when you're doing both hands. So tip number one for doing your pull downs is focus on your upper arm and not on your hand. So that's one of the big mistakes I see a lot of people doing with basically any exercise is they're focused on the implement. So they're focused on either the handle, they're focused on a dumbbell, they're focused on a cable. Anytime you're focused on that and concerned about moving that in space, your body's natural tendency will be able to find as much stuff as possible to move things in space. Your body doesn't want to make things very difficult for one isolated muscle. It wants to be as efficient as possible moving things from A to B. So obviously, you got to have your hand on a handle. You're going to have it hold enough, tight enough, depending on how much load you have that you don't let it go. But keep your focus and keep all your cues on your upper arm. So when you're doing lat training, you want your upper arm staying basically right, moving in shoulder width the whole time. So from the finish to the start, you want it in this path. You don't want it going out. As you finish, you don't want it going out. You don't want it going crazy far back here. So have all the cues that you're thinking about. Keep your mind on where your lat actually is. Your lat crosses over your shoulder joint. It doesn't cross over your elbow. It doesn't attach to your hand. So focusing on what your hand is doing, even focusing sometimes on what your elbow is doing might not be great. Instead, focus on cues of thinking about your upper arm being pulled down. As you come to the finish, think about your upper arm smashing into the side. Pay attention to where your upper arm is the whole range of motion. Your hand could technically be in a decent spot, but your elbow could be flared out. So that's tip number one. If you are doing a lat pull down for lats, focus more on your upper arm path, literally looking at where it is in space, where it starts, where it finishes, and also have all your cues with that, as opposed to, I got to get my hand right here. I could get my hand in this position doing a hard bicep curl there, or I could get my hand in this position with my upper arm tucked in tight at my side. So again, even the cues, the things you're thinking about, they're going to be different from person to person. That might help someone, might not help someone else. Keep them oriented around your upper arm, and again, not on the other stuff. Tip number two is going to be to kind of give yourself a little bit of a spot, give yourself a little mind-muscle connection here. I'm going to show you how to do this. If you don't have, if you can't basically reach around yourself, I know I just said reach around, I can't help it, giggle at home, but if you can't quite reach around or get around yourself because either you're massive or your arms aren't long enough, then you could literally have a spotter or someone helping you touch or feel where your lat is missing. So what I'm going to recommend on this one is as you're doing your lat pull down, take this arm not up high here, because there's tissue up high here that you could get kind of rotator cuff stuff. You could even get kind of up on your rear delt. But if you reach around down here, basically to the base of what you would consider the lower fibers of your lat, even to the point where you can kind of feel your lat tendon, there's a certain point in time where the muscle belly actually stops being predominantly muscle belly and turns more into tendon. There's not a clear-cut separation, so there's some part where it's more muscly, more tendony, whatever. But for me, you can see hopefully some of the muscle belly, if I've got some muscle, you can see some of the lat muscle belly up here. And then as you get further down, it gets a little bit more tendinous. So for some of my warm-up sets at least, you don't have to do it on all your working sets. The whole range of motion, I'm actually seeing, and hopefully maybe you can see this as I kind of pop my lower lat right there. My fingers are moved on my lat tendon right there. When I contract my lat, I can feel the tendon get tight. I can feel it get hard. And basically I can actually feel that there's obviously tension going through it and force production from the lat. So through the entire range of motion as I'm warming up, as I go up, I find my end range of motion where I still feel that is very tight. When I initiate, I make sure before anything else, I feel that contract hard, and honestly, motion come from that position. Because again, lots of muscles can do this. You can have, again, some rotator cuff muscles do that. You can have your rear delt do that. But if you actually have some tactile feedback where you can actually feel, is that lat tendon actually contracting, the lat muscle contracting, attaching to the tendon, you actually feel that tendon pull and get tight and rigid, then you know that at least your lat is doing something. So you'll see on some of my warm-up sets very often, I'll have my arm reached around and I'll be feeling up my side here and feeling, especially, am I going to a position where I don't lose tension at the top? When I pull down, do I feel that getting tight and contracting hard first? And that can be a great way to start to get connected with your lats. That's the tough part about training anything back, is you really can't see the muscle too well. You can see your lats a little bit from the front, but any type of feedback to say, am I actually contracting my lat? Can I actually feel it? I think is a very valuable thing. So again, I've got super long monkey arms. I'm medium-sized-ish, so I can actually do this. But if you don't have monkey arms, if you're massive, then you can literally have, depending on your training partner, hopefully that's not that weird for you, but they could do fingertips, depending on your relationship. Maybe they could grab some meat down here. But if someone literally kind of puts in the side here, their hand puts some fingers in the side, you should feel, if you're doing it right, that lat tendon kind of pop up and get rigid if you're contracting your lat properly. So that can be a great tip to help you feel your lats. Like I said, obviously you can only do that if you're going single arm, but if you had a training partner, you could do the same thing with both at the same time, touching your lats. And even if you were going both arms, you could always warm up one arm at a time, doing that yourself. So maybe just 1-2 warm-up sets like that, then grab both handles and get in and do some work, hopefully helping improve that mind-muscle connection. And again, mind-muscle connection is a very important thing. Obviously, it's kind of this qualitative thing. You can't really write it down on a piece of paper. You can maybe give yourself a scale, but obviously everyone knows it's important. Yes, progressive overload is massively important, probably in some ways the most important variable in hypertrophy. But I always say, your effort is only as useful as it is well-directed. And so again, that mind-muscle connection thing is making sure if you're writing numbers, getting heavier on paper, your form just isn't getting shittier and shittier and you're using more and more muscles. You actually have all that effort going to the targeted muscle. And obviously that effort is hopefully leading to that muscle getting bigger. Tip number 3 is to always use the thigh pad. So even if you're only going single arm, especially if you're going both arms and you're doing something close to your body weight, not only is it one, you can absolutely have the thigh pad smashed down on your thigh. So one, I always say don't have it loose, have it smashed down in. But I always like to have in the combination of smashed down in, also in a position where I can actively press up into it. So again, I will generally put it somewhere in between smashed, but also the position where I feel like I can almost do like a seated calf raise. So when I'm going and doing my pull downs, before I even start, I've got my hand up here, I'm grabbing on. Might as well just demo. I've got my hand on here, I'm grabbed on. Before I ever move, before I ever start a concentric, I actively feel like I'm doing a calf raise, pressing my thigh up into here. And then even aside from my lat, keeping my midsection, everything locked in nice and tight. So basically from my anchor on up, I am tight, I'm rigid. Everything that is not supposed to be moving is not moving and locked in stone. And that way it ensures as soon as I pull that handle, all of that handle moving is coming from force production from my lat. And there's basically no energy leaks in between. If I pull down, especially if it's hard enough, and the first thing I feel is basically my thigh then pulling up into the pad, that first little bit of effort is basically wasted. That effort is actually going to pulling your body up as opposed to pulling with your lat and pulling your upper arm and everything else down. So whether you're doing single arm, especially if you're doing both arms with a lot of weight, use the thigh pad. Get that nice balance between smash it tight and smash that thigh up into the pad, kind of like you're doing a calf raise. And again, basically you just think, obviously you're doing a lat pull down, you want your upper arm and turn a little bit of your shoulder blade moving. Everything else you want to have locked in stone. So that is your 3 tips and your one little teeny tiny bonus tip. So this is number 3.5. And this is going to seem almost like it contradicts the first one, but some of this stuff, especially if you're newer, especially if you're intermediate, being focused on positions is not bad to start, and then ultimately getting a little bit more mind-muscle connection. So if your goal is lats, 99% of the time, go with a neutral grip or a supinated grip. So again, neutral grip or supinated grip. You can write that down, or obviously somewhere in between the two. And again, why is that? Well, this changes nothing for your lat, but again, your upper arm position is very important. So if this is the upper arm position, just imagine if you were trying to do an overhand grip, depending on how flexible you are, depending on the range of this is about as far as I can get. So if I have to get an over grip on a bar and get right here, look what just happened to my upper arm. It flared away from the side and ultimately might not put me in the best position for targeting lats. So again, obviously you see if I go neutral grip or supinated grip or anywhere in between, I can keep my upper arm in nice and tight. Same thing as I come to the top. If I come to the top here and I'm trying to keep that tension on my lats, if I go overhand grip, this just kind of makes me flare everything out. Elbows flare out, in which case, again, this position is probably not quite as good as this position for keeping tension on the lats and actually getting them fully lengthened. So again, just to give you something kind of tangible, people ask all the time, well, what grip matters? And I kind of give them this long ranty answer about upper arm and how this doesn't matter. That being said, there are still some grip recommendations that can be helpful, but I wanted to say why it was helpful with tip number 1 before I give you that half of a tip. I call it half of a tip because it's only half valuable, so that's 3.5. So that is it. Going through them again. 1, focus on that upper arm position. Focus on where your lat lives between your torso and your upper arm, not the handle. Number 2, Give yourself a reach around. Yeah, I said it, or have your partner do it. Again, as far as feeling your lats are concerned, I don't know what you guys are thinking about. You guys are dirty and gross people. Tip number 3, use the thigh pad. Smash up into that thigh pad, lock everything in between, basically, the thigh pad, your torso, and your hand in stone. And again, just have your upper arm, shoulder blade a little bit during the motion. And then tip number 3, as default, most people neutral to supinated dish grip, and obviously, especially if it's a fixed handle, you should be aware of, obviously, those are your options as opposed to being forced here is probably better for lats. If you found those helpful, if you've got some questions, comments, concerns, or as usual, your mom's not responding to your text and you've got some feelings you want to vent, that's what the comment section is for here on YouTube. Leave some down below. And if you didn't already, like, subscribe. And if I asked you to subscribe in the first place and then you ended up not liking it and you don't like me, then feel free to unsubscribe. That's okay too. I won't hold that against you. Until the next one, guys, hopefully that all helped.